Sophia, the young mother at the center of this story, was born and raised in a modest neighborhood in a small town. Her early years were marked by financial hardship and emotional neglect. Her parents, both hardworking but overburdened, struggled to make ends meet while raising their 3 children. Sophia, the middle child, often felt overlooked. While her older brother bore the brunt of their father's high expectations and her younger sister demanded constant attention, Sophia found herself lost in the shuffle. Her parents' relationship was strained, punctuated by frequent arguments over money and parenting. Despite these challenges, Sophia showed promise in school. She was bright, curious, and eager to please, often using academic success as a way to gain her parents' fleeting approval. However, as she entered adolescence, the cracks in her support system widened. The lack of emotional validation at home left her vulnerable to seeking affection elsewhere. At 16, Sophia began dating casually, drawn to the validation and attention she received from boys her age. Her relationships, however, were often short-lived and tumultuous. By the time she was 17, she met Ryan, a charismatic and confident young man from a neighboring town. Ryan was a few years older, with a rebellious streak that both excited and intimidated Sophia. To her, Ryan represented freedom from the confines of her chaotic home life. Their relationship moved quickly, and Sophia soon found herself deeply attached. However, Ryan's life was far from stable. He came from a conservative family that disapproved of his carefree lifestyle, and his relationships with his parents were as strained as Sophia's were with hers. While they bonded over their shared frustrations, these similarities also planted the seeds for future conflicts. Ryan was charming but volatile, prone to bouts of anger and impulsive decisions. Sophia's parents disapproved of the relationship but lacked the will or energy to intervene. By her senior year of high school, Sophia's grades began to slip as her relationship with Ryan consumed more of her time and emotional energy. Her friends noticed her withdrawal from social activities and her increasing dependency on Ryan, but their concerns fell on deaf ears. Ryan's influence on Sophia became even more pronounced when she discovered she was pregnant at 18. The news came as a shock to both of them. Sophia, who had always dreamed of attending college and building a life beyond her small town, felt her world collapse. Ryan's reaction was no less dramatic. Overwhelmed by fear of his parents' judgment and the responsibility of fatherhood, he demanded that Sophia keep the pregnancy a secret. This demand placed Sophia in an unbearable position. Already struggling with feelings of inadequacy and abandonment, she now faced the monumental task of hiding her pregnancy from everyone she knew. Ryan's insistence stemmed from his own insecurities and the fear of ruining his reputation within his family and community. While he promised to support her in private, his actions often betrayed his words, leaving Sophia to navigate the situation alone. As the months went by, Sophia's isolation deepened. She withdrew from her friends, avoided family gatherings, and made excuses for her increasingly erratic behavior. Ryan's involvement dwindled, and his promises of support became less frequent. The once passionate and intense relationship between them deteriorated into a fragile and fraught connection, held together only by Sophia's hope that things might somehow improve. But, in the early hours of a cold October morning, Sophia's body gave in to the inevitable labor. Alone in her small, dimly lit bedroom, she endured hours of excruciating pain, muffling her cries to avoid alerting her parents. By dawn, she had delivered a healthy baby boy, his cries piercing the silence of her solitude. Overwhelmed by a tidal wave of fear and despair, Sophia's thoughts turned to Ryan's warnings and the immense consequences of anyone discovering the baby's existence. In a panic-driven haze, she made the fateful decision that would haunt her forever. Wrapping the infant in a blanket, she placed him in a garbage bag, tying it tightly. Clutching the bag, she left her house under the cover of darkness and walked several blocks to an empty lot where she deposited the bag in a dumpster. Sophia returned home, her mind racing with a mix of guilt, relief, and disbelief. She convinced herself that what she had done was a necessity, an act of survival to protect herself and Ryan from ruin. Exhausted, she fell into a restless sleep, unaware of how her actions would soon unravel. Later that morning, a sanitation worker performing routine duties at the dumpster discovered the bag. Initially mistaking it for ordinary trash, he froze when he heard faint cries. With trembling hands, he opened the bag to find the infant, miraculously alive. Shaken to his core, the worker called 911. Emergency responders arrived swiftly, rushing the baby to the nearest hospital. Despite the traumatic start to his life, the baby boy was declared stable and placed under protective custody. The police launched an immediate investigation, combing through surveillance footage and canvassing the neighborhood for leads. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town. News of the infant's survival spread quickly, and the community's initial horror turned to outrage. Law enforcement worked tirelessly to identify the mother, piecing together evidence that eventually led them to Sophia. When confronted, her initial denials crumbled under scrutiny. A DNA test confirmed her as the baby's mother, and she was arrested, her tragic secret laid bare for the world to see. The discovery of the baby was a pivotal moment for both law enforcement and the community. When the sanitation worker found the infant, his quick action not only saved the child's life, but also initiated a chain of events that would uncover the harrowing truth. The sanitation worker, who remained anonymous in initial reports, was hailed as a hero. He described the moment he heard faint cries emanating from the bag as unlike anything he'd ever experienced. His swift call to 911 ensured the baby received immediate medical attention. Later, he became a key witness, providing detailed accounts of the discovery and the condition of the baby when found. At the hospital, medical staff worked tirelessly to stabilize the infant. The baby, though cold and dehydrated, showed remarkable resilience. Doctors estimated he had been in the dumpster for several hours before being found. After thorough examinations and treatments, the infant was placed in protective custody, sparking a custody battle that would later add another layer of complexity to the case. Police immediately launched a comprehensive investigation. Detectives analyzed the scene, collecting forensic evidence from the dumpster and surrounding area. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses and residences became a crucial component of the inquiry. Grainy images captured a young woman, later identified as Sophia, walking toward the dumpster carrying a suspicious bag. As investigators pieced together evidence, tips from the community played a significant role. Sophia's neighbors reported seeing her acting unusually withdrawn in the days leading up to the discovery. Some mentioned noticing her sudden weight loss and frequent absences from school and social events. A breakthrough came when DNA evidence collected from the infant matched Sophia's profile, confirming her as the mother. The media coverage of Sophia's case was extensive and polarized. News outlets from local stations to national networks picked up the story, with headlines that ranged from sensationalist to empathetic. Some portrayed Sophia as a heartless villain, focusing on the shocking nature of her crime. Tabloid newspapers and talk shows dissected her personal life, speculating about her motivations and condemning her actions without context. Conversely, some outlets approached the story with a more nuanced lens, delving into the systemic issues that may have contributed to Sophia's actions. Investigative reports highlighted the lack of accessible resources for young, single mothers in her town and the cultural stigma surrounding unwed pregnancies. Psychological experts were interviewed, offering insights into the mental state of a young woman under extreme duress. Social media became a battleground of opinions. Hashtags related to the case trended for weeks, with users debating Sophia's culpability and the societal factors at play. The outrage was palpable, with many calling for harsh punishment. Critics lambasted Sophia as a symbol of moral decline, while others empathized, describing her as a victim of an unforgiving society. Platforms like Twitter and Facebook became forums for both vitriol and advocacy. Some users shared personal stories of unplanned pregnancies and the challenges of seeking help, drawing attention to the gaps in social support systems. Activist groups used the case to campaign for better mental health resources and reproductive education. Within Sophia's town, the reaction was deeply divided. Neighbors and former classmates expressed disbelief, describing her as quiet and unlikely to harm anyone. Some rallied around her family, offering support and understanding. Others distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the stigma surrounding the case. Local organizations and churches held vigils for the infant, who became a symbol of resilience and hope. Fundraisers were organized to support the baby's future, with donations pouring in from across the country. At the same time, protests outside the courthouse demanded justice for the crime, reflecting the community's conflicted feelings. The case sparked nationwide conversations about the pressures faced by young mothers and the consequences of inadequate support systems. Politicians and advocacy groups used the case as a rallying cry for policy changes, pushing for improved access to contraception, comprehensive sex education, and mental health resources. Critics of these initiatives argued that personal responsibility, rather than systemic reform, should be the focus. As the case unfolded, Sophia became a polarizing figure, a reflection of society's struggle to reconcile compassion with accountability. Her story served as a catalyst for deeper discussions about the intersection of personal choices and societal expectations. Following Sophia's arrest, the legal system moved swiftly. Prosecutors charged her with attempted murder, child endangerment, and abandonment. These charges carried the potential for a lengthy prison sentence, reflecting the severity of her actions. Legal experts debated the appropriateness of the charges, with some arguing for leniency due to her age and mental state, while others insisted on the need for accountability. Sophia's indictment marked the beginning of a high-profile legal battle. Public defenders took on her case, citing her lack of resources to hire a private attorney. The defense team emphasized Sophia's psychological state, including possible postpartum depression and the immense pressure she faced from Ryan and societal stigma. Prosecutors, however, focused on the premeditation and danger involved in her actions. The trial was a media spectacle. Journalists packed the courtroom, and the proceedings were live-tweeted by reporters, amplifying public interest. The prosecution presented a detailed timeline of events, supported by forensic evidence, surveillance footage, and Sophia's confession. They argued that her actions were calculated and posed a direct threat to the infant's life. The defense countered with expert testimony from psychologists, who highlighted the role of postpartum mental health struggles and Sophia's isolation. They painted a picture of a vulnerable young woman overwhelmed by fear and desperation, arguing that her actions were not those of a cold-hearted criminal, but of someone trapped in an untenable situation. After weeks of emotional testimony and heated arguments, the jury reached a verdict. Sophia was found guilty of child endangerment and abandonment but acquitted of attempted murder. The verdict reflected a compromise between holding her accountable and recognizing the mitigating circumstances of her mental health and social pressures. The judge sentenced Sophia to 5 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 3 years. She was also ordered to undergo mandatory counseling and participate in a program designed for incarcerated mothers. The sentence sparked mixed reactions, with some feeling it was too lenient and others believing it was a fair balance between punishment and rehabilitation. Following the trial, Sophia expressed remorse for her actions in a letter read by her attorney. She apologized to her family, the community, and most importantly, to her son. Her letter highlighted her commitment to self-improvement and her hope for eventual reunification with her child. The legal proceedings closed one chapter of the case but left lingering questions about the systemic failures that contributed to the tragedy. Advocacy groups continued to use Sophia's story as a rallying point for reform, ensuring that her case would not be forgotten. Sophia's time in prison became a transformative period. Initially, she struggled to adjust to the regimented life behind bars and faced hostility from fellow inmates who had learned about her case. However, she gradually found solace in counseling sessions and group therapy programs designed for incarcerated mothers. These programs allowed her to confront the trauma and psychological struggles that contributed to her actions. Sophia also enrolled in educational courses offered within the prison system, earning her GED and even starting college-level coursework in psychology. Her time in therapy inspired her to pursue studies in mental health, with the hope of using her experiences to help others facing similar struggles. Her relationship with her family, initially strained, began to mend. Her parents visited regularly, bringing updates about her son, who was thriving in foster care. Although limited by the constraints of her incarceration, Sophia wrote letters to her son, expressing her love and remorse. She held on to the hope that one day, she might earn the chance to be part of his life. The infant boy, named Noah by his foster parents, became a symbol of resilience and second chances. After his initial hospitalization, Noah was placed with a loving foster family who provided him with a stable and nurturing environment. The family, deeply moved by his story, expressed interest in adopting him, offering him a permanent home. Noah's early experiences inspired a wave of support from the community. Donations poured in to ensure his future well-being, and local organizations created scholarships in his name. His story became a powerful reminder of the importance of protecting the most vulnerable members of society. Ryan's role in the events leading up to the crime did not go unnoticed. While he was not charged with any criminal offenses, he faced public scrutiny and was named in civil proceedings initiated by Sophia's legal team. The lawsuit argued that Ryan's coercion and emotional manipulation contributed to Sophia's desperate actions. The court of public opinion was unforgiving, with many viewing Ryan as emblematic of the societal pressures that perpetuate cycles of shame and secrecy. His once promising future was marred by the case, and he retreated from public life. Years later, Ryan issued a public apology, acknowledging his failures and expressing regret for the pain he caused. Sophia's case served as a catalyst for systemic change. Advocacy groups used her story to lobby for expanded access to mental health resources, comprehensive sex education, and support for young mothers. These efforts led to the creation of community-based programs aimed at preventing similar tragedies. Legislation inspired by the case included increased funding for maternal mental health services and the implementation of safe haven laws, which allow parents to safely surrender newborns without fear of legal repercussions. These measures were widely praised as steps toward addressing the underlying issues highlighted by Sophia's story. The community, once torn by outrage and division, began to heal in the years following the case. Local organizations organized workshops and support groups for parents and young adults, fostering open conversations about the challenges of parenting and the importance of seeking help. The story of Noah's survival and Sophia's redemption became intertwined with the town's identity. Annual events commemorating Noah's rescue served as both a reminder of past failures and a celebration of resilience and hope. Sophia was released from prison after serving 3 years of her sentence. Her release marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Determined to make amends, she became an advocate for maternal mental health, sharing her story at conferences and community events. Her courage in addressing her past resonated with many, inspiring conversations about forgiveness and second chances. Though the path to reconciliation with her son was long and uncertain, Sophia remained steadfast in her efforts to rebuild her life. She worked closely with her parole officer and child welfare services, hoping to demonstrate her commitment to being a positive influence in Noah's life. The tragic events surrounding Sophia's case left an indelible mark on her community and sparked meaningful discussions about accountability, compassion, and systemic reform. Her journey from a frightened young mother to an advocate for change highlighted the complexities of human behavior and the power of redemption. Noah's story, too, carried a message of resilience and hope. His survival against all odds became a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the importance of collective action in supporting vulnerable lives. In the end, Sophia's case was not just about a crime. It was about the societal structures that failed her and the potential for growth and healing in the aftermath of tragedy. It serves as a poignant reminder of the need for empathy and understanding in the pursuit of justice.